This is the CHGO Cubs Podcast. My name is Corey. I am joined, as always, by Brendan. And Brendan, we are coming to everyone on Friday, December 1st. We have reached the month of December. The winter meetings are in just a couple of days, unless there is an emergency podcast, which, of course, you guys know the CHGO Cubs team will be prepared to go live imminently, should such news break. But unless there is, this is the last podcast until the winter meetings have begun. And
yes,
Jed is there, hopefully wheeling and dealing, or maybe he's in Japan. I don't know, right? But we made it to December, and Brendan, the big move, of course, is the managerial position for the Cubs. We're waiting for them to do stuff that gets us excited in terms of the actual folks taking the field and playing baseball. But I'm excited for this episode, everybody. We have a full hour on Cubs bench coach Ryan Flaherty. Yes. I can't wait.
This could be the biggest move of the offseason, Corey. Ryan Flaherty.
Let me get in quickly and say that I'm kidding, because I don't want people to turn the show off. That's not what we're doing.
The Cardinals are making moves. Daniel Descalso's back with the Cardinals. We got our own guy.
Yeah, the Cubs had to match.
We had to match it. Move. The value of Daniel Descalso. You have to match it with Ryan Flaherty.
I can't believe you just said that name twice.
I'm in a good mood. I have a feeling, whether it's justified or not, that Shohei Ohtani might sign before the winter meetings. I really do. I really genuinely think that's going to happen.
Like with the Chicago Cubs? You don't believe that?
I'm slowly starting to believe.
No, you're in with me and Cody. Good luck, dude.
I'm slowly starting to think about it. If you think about it, my big holdup with the Shohei was that LA, West Coast, weather, environment. But if he's going to be living in Japan during the winter, come on to Chicago. Go to the best summer city in the country. Go to that beautiful field, the beautiful city. Why not?
I've heard it's beautiful and historic.
That's what some people say.
Right. I don't know. As you know, like Cody and I, our guy Braggs, who just had his birthday the other day, we're all in. We've been all in. You and I talking to our friend Ryan Tomier every day. He's in. I get a sense a lot of Cubs Twitter is like really hinging their off season and like just general mental well-being and happiness on this. I have said I'm in. I believe it's possible. I want it. I'm going to be hurt if it doesn't happen, but I have said every time anybody asks, right, it's always been LA. And until I see it in writing, you and I said it when we were discussing that kind of like what's the most stunning thing that could happen, right? Anybody but the Dodgers. I still believe that. So for as much as I'm in, I have not wavered in that. Like that's always been the prohibitive favorite. It's always been the betting favorite, and for good reason, right? So until something changes, that's my feeling. But as I've stated the whole time, I do believe they're really in on it, which, there's no consolation prizes here. But if it is a decision that he has not yet made, because there's some reports that suggest he's kind of always known where he wants to go and he just needs to get the right deal and use the leverage and yada, yada. But if there's convincing, if that initial place is not Chicago, and there is convincing that is possible, Jed is trying. They're trying, which for right now is all that we can ask.
Jed did say at the pre-GM meetings, or they are called the GM meetings, he did say that he believed the Cubs had a legitimate chance at Shohei in 2017. So if the city and geography were that much of a hindrance, you would imagine they would not have believed they were that far in on Shohei. So I'm starting to think this is going to happen. I'm slowly thinking that.
The counter to that is that prior to that, he hadn't lived in Southern California. Now he's gotten an affinity for Southern California, but just would prefer to not play for the loser Anaheim Angels.
That's fair. I have no response to that.
Right. So
I'm in Southern California right now. So
we'll see. I think the hope was that this wrapped up somewhere around the winter meetings, maybe a little after, et cetera, et cetera. Either way, obviously a huge domino to fall. The teams that do not get this were obviously prepared to offer up a ton of money, a ton of years, a ton of innings, not next year in their rotation, but in the years following, a spot in their lineup at DH that they will not be doing any of that. So that's obviously a big pivot that these other organizations are going to have to make. And we'll see if that is the Cubs or not. So obviously we all wait here with bated breath, and we'll proceed together. I would imagine we'll do an emergency show as a group wherever he signs, I think, just to break that down. If it's with the Cubs, obviously to celebrate a life-changing
if he doesn't sign the Cubs,
moment
I'm not coming on
in
that
all
show.
of our lives. That's fine.
Yeah.
If it's not, what now? What then, right? So either direction, I think we'll be there live with you. On today's show, we'll talk about some of the rumors that are going around. I think it's going to be another pitching-centric episode, as we have the pitch doctor here sipping on his red wine. If you're not watching us on YouTube, we'd invite you to. I think it's cool. Brendan has graphs to see, but obviously, if you are a loyal listener on your podcast feed, hello to you as well. We'll talk about some of those rumors, talk about pitching, talk a little bit about some of the bullpen stuff. I was in the studio with Cody and Ryan the other day. We talked a little bit about the Cubs kind of constantly now, maybe not just because of Craig Counsell, but being connected to a guy like Josh Hader, which on the surface seems antithetical to the way the Cubs have operated for several years now, right? Especially when you look at some of the projected or even thought about contracts for him, which is several years and a lot of money, which is
6 years, 110
which
million?
I think was from MLB trade rumors.
Yeah,
Is that right?
That's absurd. Yeah.
I mean, that would be unlike anything the Cubs have done for
Ever.
a reliever. I was going to say ever. Right. I don't even know what's close. I mean, even when they signed Kimbrel, that was for what? 2 years? A year and a half?
3 years, 39 mil.
Right. Okay.
To be exact.
Right. So this would be the rumor on MLB trade rumors would be like literally double.
What was LaTroy
entire
Hawkins' contract back in the day?
Oh, stop. What?
I don't know why the thought came to me. I'm in one of those moods.
Man. I mean, are we talking like bad relievers? You want to do like Bob Howery, Will Omen, Scott Air?
Stop.
We're just guys being dudes naming old relievers.
Mike Remlinger, why not?
Yeah.
I actually liked Mike Remlinger. He was good.
Yeah, I mean, a crafty lefty at times. Yeah. He was a lefty, right? Or no? Am I making that up?
No. He had so he was a righty, like an older righty. He had like a grayish type of beard.
Grizzled veteran.
Grizzled, number 37, I believe.
Absolutely.
Why do I remember that? Why is that in my brain?
Who knows? The same way that you and I can spell Grizzleanic, like it's the back of.
Well, I can't even say Palatine on this show, so I'm not even going to try to spell. I get my C's and my S's mixed up, and I actually say the letter. I'm not even going to try.
The company we work for is CHGO,
not SHGO.
Not SHGO. Yeah.
Well, well, if Shohei Ohtani signs, we might have to change it.
Right. Possibly.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about all of that. The reason I bring up the Hader thing is obviously the Cubs have a new manager, potentially different bullpen philosophy. Brendan will look into a little bit of that, of maybe on the surface what's different between how he and David Ross may handle a bullpen, and just kind of squaring that with maybe do the Cubs loosen their philosophy on how they build a bullpen, right? I still think, and we'll get into it, but I think 6 years, that's nuts. I would be stunned if they did something like that. It's just not how they operate.
That's not happening.
That being said, we talked about the other day, I think on Wednesday when I was in the studio, maybe it does make sense that they don't just sign 35 and over veterans to see if they're still good, or reclamation projects that used to be good 3 years. Maybe there's a middle ground to the kind of piece it together model and the let's spend a ton of money and years and stuff like that.
And it might be in the form of spending more on your rotation too. They've been connected to Glasnow, Shane Bieber, perhaps. Dylan Cease is on the market. So it might be filling up that bullpen by, what are you smiling at over there?
I was smiling at the notion of if the White Sox traded Dylan Cease back to the Chicago Cubs.
Yeah.
Our guy Sean Anderson, I don't know. I don't think he's coming into the studio anymore. I think Sean would be done.
Is that
I think
it
he's
for
just
him?
done.
Well, the Cubs have a precedence for acquiring cost-controlled, team-controlled White Sox starters.
Sure.
Wouldn't it be the first time? That's all I'm saying.
Great.
Yeah.
And we loved it the first time. So let's do it again.
Not doing that again.
Anyway,
I don't want to talk about that guy.
Let's start with this. As the winter meetings come up, it doesn't always work this way. Some winter meetings are way more interesting than others, right? But I don't want to say concern, but how do you feel that we went into this offseason raising the expectations for the Cubs, right? Needing a lot of things to be better come 2024 and just having a higher overall standard stemming from not only our own beliefs of what this organization should be, but the quotes from the upper management. Last year wasn't good enough. Y'all said it, right? We all think it and said it, but you guys just said it too, like verbatim. So everybody raised the standard. Here we are. It's December 1st as we come to everybody on this fine Friday, and they have addressed nothing on this roster, right? They've gotten better at the managerial position. I don't think anybody's questioning that. I think in a significant way, right? Your president showed that he's cutthroat. He's making the moves, like whatever to get done. As far as the roster's concerned, Marcus Stroman's gone. Cody Bellinger's gone. They're available, but currently they're gone. And you haven't done anything else to sort of shore this stuff up. Does that concern you at all? Or with the way the market's kind of going, not really?
Not really. It's still so early, right? Famous last words. But Shohei Ohtani is a domino. Juan Soto is another domino. We're talking about two players historically who have never been available. Like Juan Soto, at his value and age, has never been available on the open market, on the trade market. Shohei Ohtani, $500 million guy, he's never been available. So this is legitimately a historical offseason. So a lot of concern might be warranted, but also things are going to move at a pace that is unfamiliar to us. If we're talking about this towards the end of December, yeah, of course I'm worried about this. If we're talking about this even 5 days from now, we'll see what happens. It did take the Cubs some time last year to shore up their big signing, and we liked it. It worked out well. They did make secondary moves during the meetings with Bellinger and Tyone, but until those meetings progress, I'm not going to freak out. That's where the majority of the news breaks. And again, as I said earlier, my expectation is that Shohei Ohtani will sign before the meetings because there's only a handful of teams, and he likely has been talking to these teams for a while now because they want to get that out of the way. To have a guy on your payroll with an annual average value possibly 40 plus million.
Right.
You need to sink that.
You can't really proceed. Yeah.
You can't proceed. So of course teams are going to feel a sense of urgency to get it done before the meetings.
Well, and it's an interesting thing. Like I think it'll be very interesting however it shakes out to kind of see if we get any information on the process. Obviously it's been clear that it's Shohei and his camp's preference that this process not be getting out right now in terms of like the actual details. And it seems as though everybody's following suit with that, because other than the random like people claiming they heard something of interest.
You don't believe that?
I do not.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
We haven't heard very much, right? Like there's little rumors of teams that might be in this process, but we've heard nothing on potential contract numbers. We have no concrete information on like when he's visited anybody or what those visits like included. I mean, even when they film like seasons of The Bachelor, there's spoilers on, I saw them at the Grove, right? Like in LA or something like that. We got nothing.
I used to live over there by the Grove, right across the street.
That's why I said it.
Yeah,
I know.
Yeah.
So but what I mean is it's going to be interesting to see, because like you think of this from like Jed's perspective, right? Like I genuinely believe they're in this, and I think they're going to submit an offer and a proposal and a presentation that is on par with anybody else. The stuff they can't offer, right? They can't change the weather in Chicago. They can't move the city closer to Japan, et cetera, right? But the stuff they can, I believe they're going to, and I think it's going to be competitive. But if you're Jed, right? Like the industry seems to have believed it's been LA all along, right? That's everybody's sort of sense. So if you're Jed, you got a lot of holes to fill, right? So I wonder, it's fascinating to think as someone in charge of an operation like this, how do you balance these things, right? You go into this process making an earnest effort and wanting to get it done. But if you maybe have a sense, and maybe he doesn't, but like if there's a sense of like, are we really the favorite for this? Like, what if we don't get him? I got a lot of work to do, right? It's just sort of a fascinating, like, how do you balance that, Because, like, we see things like, oh, the Yankees and Soto are heating up. And if you're Jed, you're like, oh, man, I really want Juan Soto, but only if we don't get Ohtani, but I can't do the one without knowing the other. It's a tricky spot, Brendan.
Get it done. It's your job. You get paid a ton of money to do it. Can't multitask. Give me the phone. I'll call both their agents right now. I'll get both of them.
No, but I mean, I was saying to your point of, like, if you're going to take on a $40+ million contract, how do you know what else you can do?
Yeah, you have to, it's beyond just the Cubs too. Exactly right. Like, you can't project a payroll if you have a potential slot at 40 to 50 million, even for the Dodgers, who are still under the tax like the Cubs, and the Yankees, who need to be competitive. They need to understand, what does my team look like when I go into winter meetings?
Yeah. So very fascinating. I'm with you though. I'm fine. I'm getting impatient. Like, just because there's so much they need to do.
It's December
there's a lot
1st,
they need to
dude.
do, man. But no, it's okay because the market hasn't moved that much.
Yeah.
A lot of the people that they're tied to are still available. There's options everywhere. So it is what it is. I'm just impatient. But, I think there are things that they can do in the interim. And I think, like, that's why you hear so much about the pitching market, right? They are connected seemingly every day now to Tyler Glasnow in Tampa Bay. They've been connected to Shane Bieber out of Cleveland. They're obviously, we talked last week about, the guys out of Japan, Yamamoto, Imanaga, et cetera, right? Like, they're going to be connected to these. So I did want to talk about, I think Glasnow and Shane Bieber are a similar conversation, but we can center it on Tyler because that one seems to be the name that's coming up more. Bruce Levine added to that chatter on Thursday afternoon, I think, and it had already been kind of out there, like, that just connection.
Good to get confirmation.
And, like, like, hearing it from Bruce is just, like, more smoke to that fire. So I'll throw it to you. Like, I think it's a two-part question. So firstly, like, the general info on Glasnow, 1-year contract, $25 million. Obviously, he's had some injury concerns, missed some time in certain seasons, things like that. But obviously very good when he's out there, right? We've seen him on the big stage at times with the Rays here in the last several years. What do you think of the move in general? If it were for 1 year, just making the trade to bring him over, eating that money, if that's what it is, because the Rays need to get out from it. And then further, would that move in a vacuum alone address the rotation, or would there need to be more supplemental moves still to be made?
First off, Glasnow would be one of the best starting pitchers the Cubs have ever had. He actually might be the best north to south pitcher from a carry four seam to a curveball slider they've had since Mark Prior. I can't remember in the past 20 years having a pitcher who can throw mid to upper 90s with that carry at that stature with that sharp curveball. You can point to Jake Arrieta in 2015, that dominant second half. Arrieta was crossfire towards third base with a two-seamer, a very tight cutter slider, and a curveball that wasn't really his dominant pitch type compared to a slider and cutter that season. This is a completely different pitcher. If you look at how Glasnow grades by, let's say, pitching bot, that machine learning score that grades from a 20 to an 80 on that scale, his four-seam fastball grades an 80 out of 80, dude. That's the best four-seam fastball in Major League Baseball, according to the stuff that gets input that model, including velocity, including release point, including horizontal and vertical break, etc. Then you look at his off-speed pitches. He has two to pair with that four-seam. He has a curveball and he has a slider. His slider is around 90 miles per hour. It looks very similar to what you see from Adbert Alzolay. Then you have a curveball that can match in that same window that goes a little bit more south at 80 to 83 miles per hour. He is a very diverse pitcher that can handle all-star lineups, whose only concern is health and stamina And that's the limitation. Do the Cubs want to invest a prospect, 2 prospects, in addition to taking over $25 million against their luxury tax? If they do that right now, if they trade a prospect, a mid-tier prospect, and pay him $25 million, they will be about $25 million under that first level of the luxury tax. Now, if they trade for him, they will be about 65 under the very top tier tax before you start losing draft picks. For me, you get this deal done now as fast as you can. And to your second point of that question, still acquire starting pitching depth. Glasnow's not enough. But my thinking is if you get him to October, if you get him to September in a playoff hunt, healthy, ready to go every 5th day, ready to go every time he needs to take the ball in a playoff situation, that's ideal. And the way to get him there is spread out perhaps the outings in April, May, June, have a 6-man go once every 5 to 6 weeks, ensure that depth, ensure that your lower back end of the rotation is not going 3-4 innings at a time. That's how you do that. And if the Cubs are serious about spending money and being competitive in this window, assuming they're not going to go over that third tier of the tax, by acquiring Glasnow, you still have an enormous pool of money to spend, even on Shohei Ohtani. So this, to me, is a no-brainer. It's essentially substituting Stroman's commitment before the opt-out with Tyler Glasnow. And if you want to play the high-extreme game, there's no other high-extreme starting pitcher in baseball than Tyler Glasnow. Right. And for me, he's one of my favorite pitchers to watch. He is so good, dude. That stuff is next level.
Yeah, and I saw our friend Brett from Bleacher Nation tweeting about this earlier today, and kind of a good, just like a little bit of a note. He was talking about how, like, obviously Glasnow's missed time, and I think he's considered someone that is injury prone, if you want to use that phrase. I don't like that phrase, but, whatever, right?
Yeah.
But he pointed out that it's not necessarily like it's the same injury popping up or it's 10 different injuries over the years. It's a few that have cost him a ton of time. Whether that makes you feel any better is up to you. But so like Brett was pointing out, he had a forearm strain in 2019. It cost him half the season. Then his elbow popped in 2021, which obviously happened in 2021 and then cost him most of 2022. Oblique strain this year delayed his debut. So again, that's not meant to be like, oh, who cares?
He's fine.
Like
he's gonna throw
it's obviously
innings.
Stuff you have to worry about. It's going to be a huge factor in this move and the price that any team, including the Cubs, would pay for it. Yeah. Yada yada yada. But it's just to suggest maybe just adding some color to it rather than just thinking, oh, this guy just gets injured every single year. That's right. Not entirely how to look at it, right? In some cases, it's one injury that then affects multiple seasons, things like that. Right. Again, this is all factored into it. And as you said, Brendan, the key to me would be, I like this type of move. And I think I would feel similarly about Bieber, has also
I actually would not.
Okay, we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
In the sense, not that they're the same pitcher, but in the sense that you make a move for someone who is not necessarily trustworthy, right? In the sense that you cannot lean on them as a 30-start, 180 inning plus kind of guy. You cannot count on them, or shouldn't count on them, being that like every 5th day we're going to run them into the ground, like grinder type starter. But they represent, as you said, just huge potential upside. So you pair that with, it doesn't even necessarily have to be someone safe, but even like if you paired that with Imanaga from Japan, who's
oh my God, that was that right there, that combo done. Right. Sign it. I'm happy.
He's a little older, right? He's 30, so he's not going to command as much as Yamamoto. I think when we were talking about that last week, we had read the Mark Feinsand tweet before he had to amend it because he wrote it really confusingly. He phrased it as though Imanaga would be getting $200 million, and you and I were both like, that's a lot for a guy that's 30. And then like an hour later, Mark Feinsand was like, I was talking about Yamamoto getting $200 million.
So what did he say? So did he
just less? Just the $200 million was for Yamamoto.
Thank you.
Yes.
I appreciate that.
My point being, there's still risk, of course, bringing Imanaga over, right? But like the way you're pairing that is like, okay, we're sort of hedging the risk of a guy coming over and having to translate to a new league, making those adjustments, things like that. We're hedging that with a guy who, if we can keep him healthy for a certain number of starts, can be really good at the MLB level. And we know that, and we can use our prospects. And even for you and I are terrible at the hypothetical trade thing, but like, I don't think the price for Glasnow, especially because it's $25 million and because of his history, like are we even talking like a top 10 prospect here? It sounds like it sounds like they would be interested in guys who could potentially pitch at the major league level. So you're thinking,
how about Caleb Killian?
Or Hayden Wisniewski, or I've seen Keegan Thompson's name thrown around. You do him, you take the money, you throw in a mid-level prospect, like maybe that gets it done. I don't know, right? I'm terrible at that game. But either way, it's not going to be something that makes us all go, no, like not him. I don't think that's what we're talking about. Yeah, right.
All right, let's do this ad break here. We'll come back around. You want to talk about Bieber at the end of this?
I'm curious as to your thoughts on it. Sure. Yeah. And if you can, I think it would be helpful to articulate what you think the difference is in acquiring one versus the other.
Okay. So let's do this ad break here and then we'll get back to that. First one here from Varsity Coolers. If you need the perfect bag for game day, Varsity Coolers has you set and beyond with the best portable cooler and weekender duffel around. They have a unique design. It doubles as a cooler, is waterproof and double insulated and a travel duffel. It fits in a golf cart or as a carry-on luggage. It's also the perfect Christmas or Hanukkah or holiday gift. Built to show up in style to any party, or if you want to rep your team, they have 21 team colors. You can also use it as a gym bag. I'm looking right now at a Bears duffel. Looks very good on the YouTube channel. You can get this if you head over to varsitycoolers.us and use code CHGO at checkout for 10% off your order. Second break here from Goose Island. CHGO is supported by Goose Island Beer Company. Chicago's beer since 1988. They have a very deep beer roster. They have the Beer Hug family, the Oktoberfest, the 312 Wheat Ale, the Full Pocket Pilsner. By now, everyone knows this is what Cody Del Mendo chugs during his beer bats. Grab ultra fresh brewery exclusive beers at Goose Island's original brewhouse on Clybourne Avenue in Lincoln Park, or from their tap room on Fulton Street in Westtown. Goose Island Beer Company, Chicago's beer. And before I continue here, I do want to mention this whole Palatine controversy.
Please.
Listen.
This is your chance to speak to the people.
I read ads off my computer screen. Sometimes I don't know if what I'm saying is what's appearing on the paper as it sounds. I have done thousands of ads, dozens of thousands of ads. You, Corey, and everyone else, don't do these ads like I do. I have one slip up, okay? One. I've been doing this forever. That's the only slip up I have, and I get called out for it. Completely uncalled for.
I think you got called out for it because it feels disrespectful to Mike Talkman.
Listen, man, I didn't
They
even
said
know.
Palatine on the broadcast 1,000 times.
I did not even know what I said until you corrected me. I even asked you last episode, I'm like, did I say Palatine? Of course I know it's Palatine. Come on now. Come on. Slander. And no one came to my defense. Not even you. I'm
the one that made fun of you in the first place. Of
this
course
is
I did.
all your fault.
Yeah.
You never have my back.
No.
You're like
All right.
Jed Hoyer. You would stab me in the back.
I'm ruthless, cold-blooded.
I can tell.
I'm like Mac from Always Sunny. I play both sides so that I always come out on top, Brendan. All right, let's get back to the potential trade stuff. Talk to me about Shane Bieber. Now, I should clarify though, like the Glasnow stuff. If you're reading like Twitter tea leaves, that's way more a thing, right? I think the Bieber thing, I'm not sure I've heard too much of. Just maybe like a loose connection because it kind of maybe makes sense, and Cleveland is always one of those teams that like maybe guys are available, things like that. The Glasnow stuff is like picking up steam. Like I said, Bruce Levine talked about it on Thursday. Was reading again from Bleacher Nation that Jesse Rogers was talking about Glasnow and the Cubs. Like, so it does seem to be something that is like actually being talked about.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's noteworthy to point out how different Bieber is as a pitcher. And at the preface, I have no problem for the Cubs acquiring Bieber. I will get on board with that. It requires a different set of complementary moves.
I have a reason that I don't want him, and I don't think you'll allow me to say it on the air. But it's kind of funny.
When you say something like that,
you already said. All right, you talked to me about Daniel Descalso tonight, so.
I mean, I don't even know where you're going with this.
It's someone whose name is on the banned list. Can I say it?
Sure, go for it.
I don't remember what season it was at this point. It must have been 2021 then, now that I'm putting it together. When they were in Cleveland, Eric Sogard took him deep.
Why does that even come to your brain?
Because that's the first thing I think of when I think of Shane Bieber.
The first thing you think of Shane Bieber's Eric Sogard.
That Eric Sogard hit a home run off.
I couldn't even tell. Actually, I do remember that. I really do. And I was going to say, I don't know how you remember that, but I remember it too because I'm sick. I'm sick like that. Yeah. We've given too much time to these guys.
All right.
That's it.
All right. Talk to me. No more. Go ahead. Yeah.
All right. So Shane Bieber, compared to 2020, even 2021, he's a different pitcher now. He's gone through a series of arm injuries, even dating back to last season, missed about 2 months with an elbow injury, he's had a shoulder injury. As a result, his stuff is much different. In 2021, he was throwing 93 miles per hour on average. In 2020, 94 miles per hour on average. Last season, about 91 and a half. So we're talking about a 2 to 3 mile per hour drop. We're also talking about stuff and how it grades. Glasnow's fastball grades as an 80 out of 80, but for Bieber, it's a 39 out of 80. That's essentially one standard deviation below the league. So he's different. He's almost like a softer version of Marcus Stroman, I will say. When I say softer, I mean in projecting value, whereas Stroman has had some injuries, the broken rib. He hasn't had the severity of 2 arm injuries in the past 3 seasons. Now, for Bieber, he's still valuable. If you look at his numbers last season, even in shorter innings, 128 innings, 3.8 ERA, 3.87 FIP, I will take that. The way he's doing that is through weak contact, 7.5 K per 9 versus...
too much of that.
Too much contact, right? And that's kind of the crux of the issue. We have
too much of that, yeah.
Yeah, we have too much contact. That's kind of the crux of the issue. 2021, he had a K per 9 of 12 and a half batters per game. So it's very different. Okay. Now, the difference between Glasnow and Bieber, that is an advantage for Bieber if you prefer him, it's the money. So he'll be due next season around 12 million or so, given what he's projected in arbitration. So you're talking about half the commitment, which may allow Jed to go out and get an extra pitcher if he wants to. Go out and get a high priority reliever, as, for example, Josh Hader, if those rumors are indeed valid. So that's where the difference lies. But if we're going by pitcher alone, and who I feel most comfortable heading a playoff rotation, assuming both those guys are healthy, it's Glasnow 100 out of 100 times. That's why I feel very differently about the two ultimately.
Yeah. All right. That is certainly fair. And I think, right, like one of the things we talked about a ton is like needing more swing and miss, power pitching. Like they have a ton of guys that can manage contact. They have some guys that are the best at managing soft contact.
And even in the bullpen too, like the bullpen gives up too much contact.
At some point, you got to miss bats. Somebody on the pitching staff needs to just throw the ball past people, right?
And to some degree, not everything, but the Cubs run differential was plus like what, 100 last year. They had a lot of self-inflicted wounds, but there's still a degree of randomness that if they had sequenced better, maybe they would have been in the playoffs. All it took was 2 games.
Right. All right. So the thing with them too, right? Like I know depending on the package, like people are always wary about that. I think people are going to be wary about guys that have, had injury concerns, things like that. But like this falls into that same category to me of when we've talked about like Juan Soto or something. Not the same caliber of player, but in terms of what we've talked about before, where I think it's important to remember that not every player the Cubs bring in needs to be on the same timeline as like Craig Counsell's contract or Dansby's contract, right? 2024 is an opportunity for the Cubs to compete and win a championship, or at least win the division or get back into the playoffs. And so if somebody comes over, let's say it's Tyler Glasnow, and he's only here for a year, fine. That makes them better for a year. Not every move you make can exist on the same timeline. The idea, you have to sometimes make moves that are future oriented. And Jed has talked about that a lot, about being conscious of moves that mortgage the future too much, right? For a singular moment. But a move like this is not going to be doing that. I don't think any of the moves that we're talking about are going to be mortgaging the future, right? Those types of moves are when you're trading for several years of cost-controlled players and having to ship off top prospects. That's not really any of the things that we've been talking about, frankly, right?
Yeah.
So I just say that because I think it's an important thing for people to remember, right? Because I think there's this weird like trepidation about, well, what if he doesn't sign an extension? Or it's just 1 year. Should we give up that for 1 year of somebody? Yeah. It makes them better in 2024. That opportunity to win is exactly equal to all the other ones, right? You don't know when prospects are going to develop. You don't know how the free agent market's going to play out, trades, things like that. You have to sometimes make moves that just make you better right now. And that's okay.
I think that the way I've started to think about like 1 year windows has changed over the last, I don't know, 4 years. In principle, I've never been.
The game has changed.
The game has changed, but in principle, I've never been like, oh, rebuilds are good. I will say that. But to your point, the game has changed. And I think if you look at 2025, there's so many ways to make that team better that I am more willing to risk.
2025, what do you mean?
What I mean by that is if you're concerned about only having these guys for 1 year, right? There's so many ways to improve in 2025 if those guys don't re-sign. That you can be good. So my thinking is, you know what? That's a huge unknown. I am now, compared to 4 or 5 years ago, more aggressive up front. I will give up more prospects. I will give up more money to get Juan Soto and Tyler Glasnow because there's going to be development that is surprising, that turns out to be a plus for the Cubs. And likewise, there is going to be bust. Some of these prospects don't work out. And you can look no further than the opposite side of Chicago, where the White Sox, they lost, 100 games last year?
Probably. I don't know.
Right? That was a low probability outcome, even from the Cubs fans' perspective. All of us were shocked. It happens. And I think it happens maybe not more than it used to, but the way I think about it has changed. So there's an opportunity to get these guys.
I think the opposite to that is you look at a team like the Padres, right? And
that's
none of this is apples to apples, but they sort of had the opposite approach. Let's lock up everybody forever, right?
And then your TV deal fell through.
And then then your TV deal falls through, or you aren't getting the performance that you wanted, but it's difficult to switch things up because you've built this core that exists for 10 years, right? And if you want to change it, you got to get somebody money or give you something of substantial value for those things. Like there's opposite sides of the coin. Even if you build this, like, no, we're going to have this like strong foundation for 8 years. Like, well, maybe the foundation cracks, right? And it was awfully expensive and it's not easy to fix, right? So there's different ways to go about it, but I do think like I like talking that through occasionally because a lot of the names we're talking about are not long-term solutions, right? And I mean, I feel like it was only 18 million, but Cody Bellinger is such a good example of this last year, right? They signed him for 1 year. They didn't trade anybody to get him, but they signed him for 1 year. There was obvious risk, right? 18 million for a guy who had been really bad, right? But it offered the opportunity to improve the team for the 1 year that he was here. And what did he do? Exactly that, right? Yeah. Like, I wish now that they had him longer, but in terms of making that 1 year commitment, like, that's okay. Like, sometimes things can just help you right now. And then, as we've said before, like, you're a team that has big resources. If Tyler Glasnow leaves in a year, open your wallet and fix the problem then. Like, you have the ability to do that.
It's a delicate balance, right? Because sometimes one-year deals are also not good. Sometimes one-year deals, when they start accumulating, prohibit you from making deals at the deadline. Michael Fulmer, for example, with the injury history, ended up costing them a move at the trade deadline for a reliever that may have been more stable. So in one sense, I would like them to spend, and I like the idea of having short-term commitments and being aggressive. But if we relate last season and how they spent their one-year deals, to me, I didn't like that. I rather spend more money on a singular player than spread it out and play that risky game. And that even goes, I know it's crazy to say, but that even goes to the thinking of Cody Bellinger. Cody Bellinger met every single dream scenario of the Cubs. But you and I had a discussion last season that if we sign Cody Bellinger, where else are you going to get that projectable offense? So I'm not going to be playing this game of like, oh, the 99th percentile projection of this guy is going to be an MVP type player. No, I need the 50th percentile projection to be an all-star player. That means you got to spend $30 million. You got to go on trade PCA. You got to go on and make these moves while investing, getting the very best development team in your system. And that is always the goal. I know they're trying to do that, but that's the execution that you and I dream about that's necessary for long-term stability.
Yeah, and I think, finishing on the Glasnow thing, and then we'll come back and talk about some of the relief stuff. There would be risk there, right? And for a team that has holes and needs to get better, that would be a calculated risk, right? Can we keep him healthy? Can we maximize how we stretch out his starts and get him to September and the playoffs, et cetera, which is why I think you would look for one, like a supplementary move if you did it. And it doesn't have to be one of those guys out of Japan. It could be a depth piece but something that's a little more like, here, we're going to pencil this in and we can just kind of count on this guy to give us 25, 30 starts of this caliber, right? Yeah. And it's also because you need that depth. We talked about that too. Obviously, there's a risk there, but there's so much there's so many unknowns and uncertainties, even with the depth that the Cubs have, right? Is Kyle Hendricks able to continue at the form he was at? Is Jordan Wicks able to continue developing and make adjustments as the league adjusts back to him in his first full year at the majors? Does Javier Assad get an opportunity to start? Does he make those same adjustments that we're talking about for Jordan Wicks? Justin Steele, second, full year, at this capacity, if you will, or third, however you want to look at that, right? Is he able to keep this up? Does he get better, right? There's a lot of questions. Who knows with Jameson Taillon, right? I have no idea, right? So getting Glasnow would offer you the opportunity, the ceiling that is extremely high, right? One of the best ceilings in the league, but there's risk. So pair it with something that's a little more stable, and that's your starting pitching spending for the offseason. And I think you feel very good about that depth, and that doesn't even really get into, does, someone like Cade Horton get in the discussion? Do other guys from your minor leagues move their way up and get in the discussion? I think you'd feel pretty good about that group, but I don't think you can just make one of those trades singularly. I think there's too much and risk.
They never are. We talk about them sometimes in singular context, but they're made with a variety of secondary moves to come. Right. All right. Do this ad break here, come back, talk about the bullpen. On my mind is bullpen usage and Adbert ALLCITY, for example. So I do want to talk about that. But first break here. Charlie, the bacon guy, Corey, is based out of Woodridge, Illinois, and he makes craft bacon and bacon jams in over 30 different flavors. The bacon and bacon jams are an all naturally cured, fancy, preservative-free product. There aren't any ingredients that Charlie can't pronounce himself involved in the process, unlike most store-bought bacon. It's also vacuum sealed and freezes great. It lasts in the package up to 45 days in the fridge and 6 months in the freezer. The bacon jam lasts about 60 days in the fridge, usually 20 seconds in my house, but also up to 6 months in the freezer. Some great favorites are the maple pepper, the French toast flavor, the buffalo ranch, jalapeno, garlic, a lot of different flavors. They also had just basic ones like the original bourbon, spicy, or even peach. The bacon jam goes perfectly on anything in scrambled eggs, toast, crackers, burgers, grilled cheese, cinnamon rolls, or Charlie's favorite, the spoon. You can pick up...
Or Corey's favorite, pizza.
Or pizza. That I didn't know about you. We'll have to talk about that afterwards. You can pick it up, or Charlie will deliver it to you, meet you halfway, or even ship it. He makes the bacon so you can bring it home. Starting now until December 15th, you can save 10% off on your order or at charliethebaconguy.com. When you use CHGO, get your orders in and use that code to save. Second break here. From Empire. With Empire today, you get to shop at your home convenience, the right product for your needs, quick and professional installation, and a low price guarantee. Empire today is the best place to get new flooring, so of course they have copycats. But Empire can't be beaten on quality, service, speed, so competitors advertise low quality products that Empire simply won't carry. Empire won't promise you the lowest prices because anyone who does that is putting flooring in your home that they would not put in their own. They also have a virtual floor designer that is a great way to see how new floors will look in any space. It's easy. Just snap a picture and instantly see how new floors will look in your room. Schedule a free in-home estimate today. All listeners can receive a $350 off discount when they use the promo code CHGO. That is a massive discount, $350. Restrictions do apply. See empiretoday.com/CHGO for details.
All right, Brendan, let's talk some bullpen stuff. So I talked with Cody and Ryan on Wednesday kind of about the hater connection. First of all, as I said on the show on Wednesday, I think I would have some tweets to delete about Josh Hader. I don't think I've been kind to him.
Justifiably so, by the way.
He deserved that. Correct.
He did deserve that.
He also gave up a homer to Jason Hayward one time, Ildemaro Vargas. I don't know. I remember every bad hitter that's ever hit a home run.
I was going to say,
right?
But I don't want to go down that directory again. So,
I would be very surprised if the Cubs, again, the MLB trade rumors projection was 6 years for a ton of money. I would be stunned, floored, if the Cubs gave a 6-year contract to a reliever.
Yeah, so would I.
I don't want them to do that. That's bad business, right? Like that stuff is rarely a good idea.
Not going to work out.
So I'm not in at that level. But as we were kind of talking, and I will sort of cede it to you here to kind of walk us through maybe at least on your first perusal of this, like the differences between Counsell and Ross and how they might go about things or the way they might implement a particular staff. But as I was saying, like I do think that there's some, I understand the idea that maybe the Cubs would be a little more flexible in that area than they have been in the past. The bullpen place this, if you had to pick a singular thing to blame for why the Cubs didn't make the playoffs, up to you what you wanted to pick. I think a lot of the people in our YouTube chat would have picked David Ross, right? Well, they fixed that if that's what you believed. It was the bullpen, right? It just was the bullpen. And I don't think it was necessarily the fault of the guys in the bullpen. I think it was the fault of the people that built the bullpen. It was not good enough to get through what they needed to get through. It just wasn't. And I think they knew that at the trade deadline, or they should have known that, and they only added Jose Cuas. So, right? That's what I think is, if I had to pick one thing. So given that, I don't think you over course correct, right? And say, well, we're just going to spend all our money on a bullpen because we're not letting that happen again. But I think you can be a little more flexible in saying, okay, like instead of signing, what was he at the time, 35-year-old David Robertson, and hoping he still has that kind of like
Michael
top
Givens,
level closer
Ryan
stuff,
Tepera, et cetera, Andrew Chafin.
Right. Like you go up a little bit and say, you know what, we are going to devote some resources and years to shoring this up in a way that we can feel more confident in. But 6 years, man, I boy, would I hate that.
I just would be so surprised if Jed did that. I wouldn't be surprised if another team did it. We saw Edwin Diaz get, 5 years. So it has happened, right? So I'm not going to be surprised if he gets that. How Jed has operated has never been in that type of commitment. I mean, he gave 7 years to Dansby Swanson, who's like the foundational Gold Glove defender, right?
And rebuffed every other shortstop because it was too many years.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it just would be very surprising. Now, given how the Cubs have operated in years past versus how Craig Counsell and Milwaukee's operated has been quite different, and it does pique my interest how things would change as a result. So I'm going to show a graph here, and what you're going to see is a difference between how the Milwaukee Brewers operated versus the Cubs in reliever usage, specifically multi-inning games, okay? So if you look at this chart, you're going to see two distributions. There's a yellow distribution, that's Milwaukee's distribution of relievers who averaged 1 inning, 1.5 inning, or 2 innings per outing. And you're going to see a blue distribution, likewise, of Cubs relievers who pitched 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5 innings. What you're looking at here is the peak, which is the majority of Brewers relievers pitched on average 1 inning per outing. That means they're used in 1 inning burst. Come in the 7th, leave at the end of the 7th. On the contrary, the Cubs are a little bit flatter, where they have several pitchers pitch 1 inning, 1.5 innings, 2 innings, even 2.5 innings. And it looks as if the way the Cubs deployed their bullpen, as we know, as we watched all season and even predating 2023, they used guys in multi-inning roles. Even Michael Fulmer, who bridged at times the 7th inning to the 9th inning, who bridged the 6th inning to the 8th inning. Before ALLCITY became your hard-nosed closer in the summer, he bridged also the 5th inning to the 7th inning for, at the time, Boxberger and Fulmer. So the Cubs have had the capacity and the willingness to go multiple innings, whereas from Milwaukee's perspective, they've been basically one and done. And now the question is, why does that happen? Is that a philosophical issue or a difference? Is that a roster design intentional difference? And ultimately, what does Craig Counsell have to say in how the roster is shaped? And if those in-game preferences for one-game outings, if they even exist and not are just a byproduct of random development, if that changes how they go out through the offseason. There was a time in the press conference when Counsell was mentioned, and he said, I'm going to push Jed, he's going to push me, right?
Dansby's going to push both of them.
Yeah, probably. A very big difference between the two organizations has been how Milwaukee's used their bullpen. And to their credit, they've been way better than the Cubs at doing this. And to point at that graph here, as I showed, to say, Milwaukee's had better starting pitching depth. That is true. And there's a lot of reasons for that happening. But at the same time, it's not the sole explanation. Milwaukee had only one guy throw over 170 innings last year, and that was Corbin Burns. The Cubs had 4 starting pitchers throw more than 130 innings. They weren't getting shelled every 5th day, despite some of our bad memories. They intentionally used Hayden Wesneski from the 5th inning to the 8th inning at times. He blew games in Colorado as a result, going into the 5th inning. They intentionally took Smiley out of the rotation, partially because he was bad, but also simultaneously because they had no help in the bullpen. He pitched towards late August, September, 2 innings, 3 innings, 4 innings.
Relievers.
Yeah, one of the best relievers, even later in the game. So it's not all to say that, the reason we see this is because of bullpen games, even though that was one of the reasons. It appears as if the roster was designed by Milwaukee to be optimally used in short bursts, where you only have 1 to 2 guys capable of going multiple innings. Now, does that change how Craig Counsell wants the Cubs to approach the offseason. Maybe he wants to spend money on Hader. Maybe he wants to shore up that top level depth at the rotation where then you can space people out and not have a guy like Javier Assad go 3 innings. You can use him in a 1 inning role. Maybe Counsell wants to say, hey, Wisniewski, your days starting are over. You're going to max out 98 and 99 with that wipeout slider. You are now a reliever. Goodbye starting. Keegan Thompson, same thing. No more 3 inning rolls. You are a max effort guy in 1 inning. Those are the differences I'm curious about, if they even exist, because that is such a stark difference. You can't just chalk it up to just randomness. That's an intentional philosophical change from a roster design perspective. And also, I do think a managerial willingness to do that.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting. I think that was one of the things that I've expressed over the years I didn't really care for.
From day one, you've hated that.
And
to be fair, I liked it. I really did.
Well, and I have given David Ross credit for, I think, the usage of certain guys to see if they could do it, right? Because then they did end up finding out certain things about certain guys, right? And that was necessary. You have to put them through those paces to figure those things out. But I did feel like there were a lot of times where it's like, why is Michael Rucker pitching a second inning? You know what I'm saying? Like, how many outs are we going to try to squeeze out of some of these guys, right?
Even like
some of that is
even like Dylan Maples back in the day.
Yeah, I mean, like some of that, as you mentioned, is roster construction, right? You're trying to get as many outs with whoever you got, and it's not. There's in a lot of times there wasn't better options, right? But it's going to be fascinating to see how this all blends, because I think you're hearing the rumors because I think it makes sense. You have to give Counsell better tools. I think you trust him to use them better. Like, I think he uses even last year's roster better than Ross does. Obviously, I think that, right? I think Counsell's better than Ross. I know that.
Well, so does front office.
Right. But that doesn't mean that you just say, all right, Craig, we're going to give you a turd and you shine it up for us, right? Like, that's a terrible way to operate, right? So it's going to be fascinating to see how you kind of bridge that anecdotally, right? And I'm sure the metrics back this up because they've been better than the Cubs for several years. But like when we watch those matchups, you always felt like they were just much smarter in those moves. When they were going to the bullpen, you felt like there was a real meticulous design for what was happening.
You felt
right?
You were screwed when
pretty much
Counsell came out to the mound. You thought that was it?
Pretty much. Yeah. And I mean, they obviously showed over the years an extreme ability to perform well in those close, tight, high leverage situations. We saw it time and time again. The way that they operated, they go up 2-0, like they have a roadmap for how that game ends 2-0, right? And that's just not a way that we've seen the Cubs operate or kind of like had the confidence in them to operate. Now, to get there, you have to do everything we've talked about in this show. It starts with the rotation, right? You have to have people that eat innings and eat innings reliably. You need stars, of course. We've talked about that relentlessly. But at the same time, the Cubs had so many of those short starts that just destroy your bullpen, right? So it starts there, and then it moves to the bullpen. You need reliable guys. You need some guys that have been there, done that before. You can't just ask everybody on the team to step up and fulfill a role that they've never fulfilled before. We said it all the time, but like a remarkable job by guys like ALLCITY, Mark Leiter Jr., and Julian Merriweather to be as good as they were for as long as they were, right? Because that's just not the roles that they had previously occupied in their career, right? And it was the front office's fault for not giving them more support and not forecasting properly that was not something you could just rely on for however long the season went. Right?
Even Jet said that. He said that to the media that, partially
you paid for it. So so it'll be very fascinating to see how Counsell operates differently from Ross. And I think you highlighted some of that. But obviously it starts, you have to give him the tools to operate at his best, right?
There was some belief before Counsell was a manager that he would be like a Chris Young, like a Chris Getz, a front office executive. And in some way, when you listen to Counsell speak, he comes off as a front office executive, the way he talks, the 52-48 percentile, stacking good decisions upon good decisions. It would be kind of foolish to not expect that his input to the front office is weighed more than David Ross's. No offense to David Ross, but the belief that Counsell could have been a front office executive kind of suggests that he's going to have more influence. Yeah. And from Jed's perspective, why would you not want more influence and perspective from guys you trust like Craig Counsell? So will there be a deliberate change in philosophy at the free agent level or in trade discussions as a result of Craig Counsell? I don't know for sure, but I would be willing to bet it does. It has to. The manager and front office input and the exchanges between the two have to influence ultimately the decisions that are going to be made. And if we look at, bringing this full circle, how Josh Hader was developed, he was called up, and his season in 2018, his first full season, he pitched 55 games and threw 82 innings. Then those number of innings started to shrink per outing. By 2019, 75 innings and 61 starts. Fewer innings, more outings. Ultimately, after the COVID season, 58 innings and 60 outings. He then became that one-and-done type pitcher. With Hader's belief prior to him becoming a closer that he could be a shutdown starting pitcher because of his low release point, because of his fastball, similar to that Chris Sale type mold, Counsell was the one guy who deployed him in short burst. So if anyone had the potential to be a multi-inning fireman guy, it would have been Hader, and Craig Counsell turned him into a one-and-done guy. So that to me does suggest that there is going to be a little bit of a philosophical change.
He sometimes pitched multi-innings, but I know
he did. But we're talking, Corey, 55 outings, 82 innings. By 3 years later, 60 outings, 58 innings is a massive shrink.
Yeah.
So that's not how he was used when he was called up.
Well, and again, this is anecdotal. I'm not combing through the Brewers game logs right now, right?
It sounds like you are.
I also feel like you saw them have a really good sense of in the years where they had Hader or the years where they, now have Devin Williams. I feel like they always had a very good sense of this is a Williams game. And here's the amount of runs we need to where he's no longer pitching in this game. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? You always felt like they're not wasting these outings from these guys. They know exactly when they need to be used to win and shut down a game. And if it goes out of that range, they're using, Brent Suter, right? Yeah. Who I think's available, and maybe somebody that
can we stop bringing over all these Milwaukee guys? Just one or two is enough, okay?
Well, some of them were good. I mean, we deserve to reap the benefit of whatever, devil magic
we do deserve
they were working with up there, don't we?
We do deserve it. So are you saying you want Christian Yelich?
No.
Okay.
Oh no, I think he's the player they would trade that I would have the most tweets to delete.
I have a better arm than Christian Yelich, and the numbers back it up. By the way, I never told you about this. My vertical carry is 20. I don't know how I never mentioned this. I was in a pitch lab over Thanksgiving.
I follow you on Twitter. I know.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It's also known as X, by the way, not Twitter. That's so I'm told. I have 23 inches of carry on my fastball. This is a legitimate TrackMan-centered thing. This is not make-believe. My four-seam fastball has more carry, you ready for this, than Tyler Glasnow. Okay? I'm available. I'll pitch for free if you need me. I have more carry than most pitchers in Major League Baseball. That is a fact. And I hit well. So I'm saying the next Shohei Ohtani. You look at my swing. I'll stop right here because I can see your face. But if you look at my swing, it's pretty good, actually. I have a great swing. And people have said that, too.
Yeah. Listen, I was just going to say... No, I was just going to say, I've talked to you basically every day for 7 years.
Yeah.
Listen, man, game on the line, NLCS, I can't give you the ball. I can't trust you. You're nuts.
Have you seen my swing?
It's not about that. I don't know. I don't think you can handle it.
I'm going to start crying. What about me says I can't handle the moment?
If you played for any other team, maybe.
But not the Cubs.
You love them too much. It would all be on your shoulders. I don't think you could handle
You're
it.
right. I would probably walk out to that mound. I would get vertigo.
And knowing that Cody and Ryan and Luke and I are on a post-game show talking about you blowing a game in Colorado, right? You're going to live with that?
And talking about how I say Palatine. That's worse than me blowing the game, by the way. Just saying. Anyway.
But I was going to follow up on your point about, like, as we wrap up here, like Ross and Counsell, like, obviously we never know, right? Like, we don't know these things, but there was this perception that he was sort of a yes man, if you will, that was hired by the front office because they knew him and they knew they could control is I think the wrong word, but someone that was not
their influence.
Yes, they were someone that was not going to step too much out of line because they gave him an opportunity that right away, at least, nobody else was going to give him, and they've known him for a long time, et cetera, et cetera. I think if that was true, right, and that's a very like surface level way of looking at it, right? But you've now transitioned to, like, I think Counsell's probably the furthest thing from that. And so it feels like you kind of went from like, okay, we want our influence, our decisions, and somebody to kind of implement that, to, okay, we kind of want some of that, but also someone that knows what they're doing and has a very clear idea of how he needs to win baseball games and what we need to do to support him in that. So it does feel, obviously, in addition to the other shifts, like that particular shift feels like a pretty significant one. Especially like they were talking about him being involved maybe in some of these free agent pitches, things like that.
Yeah,
like,
that's what I mean.
It seems like if that was true, that Ross was just sort of like a guy to follow orders, if you will. This is not that, right? So it's going to be different in that capacity. You said, they're going to push each other, and I really believe them when they say that, because Counsell seems like a guy who has very specific ideas about what he needs from a player perspective to win baseball games.
It sounds like they have an assistant GM in the dugout. That's what it sounds like to me.
Well, two of them.
Who's the other one?
Dansby.
Oh, that's right. Of course.
But I don't know that Dansby's like input is. Counsell probably has sheets and graphs and all this other stuff,
you don't
right?
think Dansby has that?
I think Dansby's.
I've seen him with that iPad. I've seen him with the iPad. Dansby
feels like more of a, like, he's waiting in Jed's office going like, how'd we get better today? You know, where'd you spend money today? Right. Like pointing to his watch, like, let's go, man.
Yeah. Pushing each other in different ways.
You know, who's my third baseman? Who am I throwing to at first base? Let's go, dude. Yeah. You know?
So Javi Baez, perhaps? No?
No, please.
I know.
We talked about this
on
Wednesday,
I know you
man.
did. I listened to you guys.
No, I know. Like, why? Yeah. No.
It's nostalgia. Everyone loves nostalgia.
And Cody, I think Cody brought this up on the show on Wednesday. How did that work out for everybody with Jake Arrieta? Don't do that. You don't want it.
But I did at the moment.
I do not, man. So in the last couple minutes, talking about this seriously, right? Even if Detroit ate the whole contract, he is a black hole on offense at this point. Why would the Cubs add that? I don't understand.
His contact rate's good. It's gone up. Listen. I'm just like being sarcastic here. If you want to unequivocally put yourself in a position of success, then you need a confident projection. So with Javi, he's all over the place. We always knew that, but when I projected Javi as a 31, 32-year-old, I thought the contact would be non-existent. I thought he'd be whiffing every other pitch, and I thought he'd be slugging, playing softball out there. This is the complete opposite. So I don't know what's going on with Javi. I hope he succeeds. You know, it's actually.
I watched that one pitching ninja video of him swinging at those sliders in the other.
Like his contact rate is up. His contact rate is up though. That's the weird thing about that. So all
right. Listen, so Brendan really wants Javi Baez. That's your takeaway.
No, I'm not saying that. What does he do? Like 85 more million or something like that for 4 years, 5 years? I think that's what it is.
I don't know because I didn't entertain this at all. Nostalgia is not good. Just not a good idea. So
sometimes nostalgia can be good. They should have brought back Matt Murren in 2016. He was in the organization.
Talk about that. You're like obsessed with that.
Because they called up nonsensical players and they played nonsensical players in 2016.
Yeah. I don't know.
Matt Murren was right there. I just want one at bat. One at bat. They let Rizzo pitch multiple times. Call up Matt Murren.
The only nostalgia anybody should be entertaining is John Lester could DH, I think.
That would be next level. Some say he was the original Shohei Ohtani with that
Yeah.
lefty swing.
They let Luis Torrens DH last year. You could let John Lisner
Who is
DH
that
one
again?
game.
I forgot Luis Torrens even existed.
Who knows?
Can you believe they did this stuff?
No.
I mean,
Not
this is
really.
like this is what I'm talking about. Like, come on, clean this up.
Well,
now.
he had that one like good 3-week sample that one time. Or
Who else did we
something.
have? Edwin Rios, who played like what,
Yeah,
3
I actually
games?
like that signing, to be honest.
Well, they didn't use him, so
No,
it didn't
that's
even
true.
exist. Remember Jose Martinez? He never got one base hit. I think we
Oh,
traded
yeah.
for him in like what 2020, the COVID
Right.
year.
Yeah.
Not one base hit. He kills us on the Cardinals, comes over to the Cubs.
Incredible.
Terrible.
Truly. Yeah.
Really, it's crazy how
Good
that happened.
memories. Good memories. Isn't this fun, everybody?
Oh,
Talking Cubs.
God, go Cubs,
What
go!
a ride we've been on.
Yeah. All right, can I do this
All
ad
right.
break here? I'll turn it back over to you.
Yes.
Okay. I would like some bread right now, Corey. Some hero bread. Founder Cole Glass baked 100 muffins per day before he found the perfect blend that fit his allergy constraints. That's what pushed him to start Hero Bread. The big feature of Hero Bread is its high fiber, ultra low net carbs, and 0 sugar per slice. And discount code for your first purchase can be used by using CHGO, which gives you 10% off at hero.co. Hero makes sliced breads, buns, even tortillas that are available on hero.co or Amazon. It has fewer calories than the leading national brand, and it also has 5 to 10 grams of protein per serving. Right now, Hero Bread is offering the CHGO fam 10% off your first order. Just go to hero.co, use code CHGO, that rhymes, to save on Hero Bread today. That's HERO.co to save 10% off today using CHGO.
Nailed it.
I know.
I'll tell you, I heard Luke describe a sandwich he made with Hero Bread one time. I was sold. Had to get some myself. It's delicious. He
I
was
need
right.
some.
Always
I mean,
trust Stucky is my
10
motto. He's
well, not
never
for-
led me astray. So
Not
far.
for everything.
So.
Most things, but not everything.
Yeah, most things.
Yeah.
All right. So that is what we have for you this week. I need Brendan. We need like a move, right? Because I admittedly I
Be careful what you wish for.
Like, huh?
Be careful what you wish for. You know,
Yeah,
there could be
maybe.
a lot of bad moves. That's all I'll say.
I just need something concrete to discuss, right? Like talking about a bunch of guys that may never ever play.
I
for the
like
Chicago
doing
Cubs.
this though. I like this. It's
Why?
fun to imagine. That's why. Here's why I like this. It's December. There's no stress on my TV, no baseball games. Sometimes I like that, sometimes I dislike it. Right now I like it. I like living this imaginary Cubs life. It gives me a lot of fun without the stress for right now. And
Okay.
1 week from now, your stress will be through the roof. This is what's going to
Yeah,
happen. Juan Soto to the Yankees. That's going to throw you off the cliff if I know you. Shohei Ohtani rumors come up to the Dodgers. You're dead. That's it. 2024 is over if you don't get one or two of those guys. I know how you operate. So for right now, I'm going to drink my wine. I'm going to dream of Tyler Glasnow and Yamamoto and Shohei Ohtani on the Cubs. Let me live my life. This is the best time of year. That in late February.
There you go.
Yeah.
You heard it here first. So, of course, keep it tuned to the CHGO Cubs social feeds and, of course, the CHGO Sports YouTube. We will have all of your coverage for the winter meetings, which are coming up just in a few days here. Our guy Ryan Herrera will have great written content over at allchgo.com. As we've said before, anything of significance happens. And I think at this point, we're all like kind of chomping at the bit for it. So, like, I mean anything, right? Like, I think we're doing an emergency show just because we want to talk about a signing. But the real stuff goes down, I promise. Some portion of our team, you guys know our team, will be live on YouTube to break things down as quickly as humanly possible. We
I
have
still
even
want that
discussed-
like 1 a.m. sign.
That's what I was going to say.
I'm hoping
we even,
for it.
like, if it's during the day, I would imagine we'll be live within 5 minutes
Yeah.
of something happening, maybe even less. If it's like late,
I'm up.
What I mean when I say
you
CHGO
and
Cubs
me.
will do it, we have contingency plans in place, right? As Brendan told you guys, I'm on his do not disturb list. I can wake this
Yes.
man up, and we will do a live
I
show
will be
for you guys.
in a bad mood, probably. Oh, if it's Shohei Ohtani, I'd be in a great mood.
Probably gets up around 4 a.m, right?
Yeah.
These days. So maybe there's crossover. We're half asleep and he's just waking up for the day. I don't know.
Could you imagine Luke at 4 a.m. on
Yeah.
the show?
Luke, you got to get on the air. They signed Ohtani. What?
Oh my! I would love to see
Yeah.
Luke at 4 a.m.
Do it from bed. We got to go live.
Oh, I can just see the eyes right now, just like wide awake.
The point being, we have you covered. I promise we have you covered. Great written content, live shows. We have you covered for the winter meetings. We have you covered for this whole off season, and any big things that are breaking, we will go live as quickly as humanly possible. So we appreciate your support. Brendan and I will talk to you next Friday. Hopefully we've got something going on, some more stuff, or maybe we'll just have more rumors.
I mean, honest to God, Shohei may sign by next week. I'm being serious here.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's totally possible. So we'll see. We'll have you covered for it all. As always, we're in this together. And I'll say before the winter meetings, last thing, remember, the off season doesn't end until it's over, right?
Stop it. Stop it.
Listen, I'm just saying, this is a reminder for myself.
Yeah, you're
right?
just projecting right now.
Yes, there's a lot of moves. There's a lot of avenues.
Yeah.
One thing doesn't go the Cubs' way, or it does go the Cubs' way. Like that, an off season doesn't make. They need more than one player, no matter what. So let it play out. You got to let Jed cook. Some of the meals he served us in the past, not very good. Maybe shouldn't have let him cook. But in this case, maybe, I don't know. We trust him again. We're giving him another shot, right?
Sure.
This is his last chance in Hell's Kitchen.
Honestly,
Gordon's
it might be
kicking
his
him out.
last. It actually might be.
No,
his
I think
last
it really
chance.
might be. Seriously, yeah. All right. Anyway,
All right.
I've been watching a lot of Gordon Ramsay, so
I can tell.
is what it is.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for listening. Thank you for tuning in. Hope you had a good holiday last week. Hope you're having a good holiday season, however you celebrate it or don't celebrate it. Hope you're well. Thank you guys for tuning in. Brendan and I will talk to you next week. Appreciate your support of the CHGO Cubs podcast. Talk to you again next week. And as always, go Cubs.